look lonely. I can fix that.
Late in the night, it was pitch dark, nothing seemed to be visible. Be that as it may, the depths of the mountains were anything but asleep. Howls and growls of beasts were echoing across the forest. The trees were shaking involuntarily as the leaves fell in a disorderly and rustling manner. And right at this instant, a soft and gentle glow faintly shimmered in the depths of the mountains, illuminating the forest. Upon a closer look, it was actually a weak and feeble branch, tender and green, its leaves as shiny and lustrous as a jade. Bit by bit, a warm and gentle shimmer was constantly pulsating from it. "This is my cheat." Suddenly, a murmur rang in the forest. It was as soft as someone speaking in the ear, only the speaker could hear it, no one else. In the darkness, there was only a slight tremor of the air. Uzu, a transmigrator, who blacked out just because he choked on a mouthful of water. But when he came to his senses, he was terribly shocked to find that he had turned into a tree. Yes, a tree, and a willow tree at that. Its branches were hanging down like a waterfall. When he took a closer look, he found that its crown was wide and spread out, its trunk charcoal black, and its bark irregularly cracked. By all accounts, it was a weeping willow with high ornamental value. Certainly, it had quite a high ornamental value, but weeping willow could be found just about everywhere. Furthermore, it was commonly used as roadside trees. Ellipsis. As for the fact that he had transmigrated, and reincarnated into a tree for that matter, Uzu did not care that much about it. He just found it a little strange, as if something that was happening very far away from him had suddenly happened right under his nose. Some people might call it unscientific. Actually, it was unscientific, plain and simple. However, Uzu's easygoing nature definitely did not mean he was unconcerned. The fact that he could survive till now was already a matter to rejoice. How dare he ask for more? Furthermore, he still had pretty good cheats. As he changed his sight, he saw a soft willow radiating a greenish hue gently swaying in the cover of the night. This was one of the 50 branches he currently possessed. This branch was glowing only because Uzu had spent 0.1 evolution points on this branch. Status, Uzu murmured again, and the next moment, a translucent blue screen appeared out of thin air before Uzu's eyes, which only he could see. Status, race, mutant weeping willow. Life, 0.4 20 years. Evolution points. 0.2 can be obtained by absorbing unknown energy and refining under the sunlight, or by preying on other animals, even plants, and extracting from them. Unique abilities. A mutated branch. Mutated. Quote. Reading the contents of the status screen, Uzu softly murmured again. Immediately, he focused his attention on the glowing branch. At this moment, the glow of that branch was already hardly noticeable. Its upgrade should be ending already. At this instant, Uzu had a very peculiar feeling. As if he could voluntarily control this branch. Yes, voluntarily control. Before, although he had turned into a tree, his body was not under his control. It was only when a gust of wind passed by that his hanging branch would gently dance along the wind. Be that as it may, it was very normal. After all, a willow tree was a plant, it was not an animal. Except, Uzu had this strange feeling at this moment. He felt as if this branch had turned into his arm. With a flicker of thought, this branch swayed slightly. Then, Uzu issued another command, and it swayed again. It even formed a circle like a nimble green snake. Interesting. Quote. Uzu became a little excited after the first attempt. He could indeed control it. Furthermore, he did not know whether it was an illusion or something else, but a feeling had started making its way into his mind. He felt that he could do more than this. For instance, he could fiercely in the air like a whip, as he did now. Snap. As if the air had exploded, a crisp snapping sound suddenly reverberated across the night sky. Immediately afterward, a white shockwave also cut through the night sky, much to Uzu's shock and surprise. The shockwave was not that big, just 2 meters wide. Be that as it may, the thing to be surprised about was the thing that left this shockwave happened to be his branch. In other words, when he fiercely swung his branch, it actually created a shockwave. So powerful. If Uzu still had a human body, he would have definitely propped up his chin in contemplation. If it hits a human, it might end up killing him. Quote. Scratch that, it would definitely kill him. Quote. After giving it another thought, Uzu was a little certain of this. After all, the might of this whip was not just limited to tearing the skin apart. In any case, it had also created a sonic boom. Sonic boom, it was not an unfamiliar term to UZU. Even a human holding a 10 or so meter long whip could create a sonic boom. A whip would make a snapping sound when it was swung at high speed. This phenomena was scientifically explained about 100 years ago in his previous life. When a whip was fiercely swung, the force would travel along the whip until it reached its tip, at which point, the whip would also be pulled to its maximum speed, until it breaks the sound barrier. Then, when it travels through the air, it would produce a short but extremely short clapping sound. And this clap was known as the sonic boom. So to say, I got some lethality, and I'm not weak either. UZU became a little emotional, gazing at the 2 to 3 meters green branch wantonly swaying in the night sky. After having become a tree, he originally thought that he would remain on the other end of the beating stick for his life, enduring everything. He never imagined that he would be given a stick to fight back in just a matter of a few days. UZU broke into an amused laughter, as if he was looking at something very funny. How about that, you buzzing, annoying fuckers? Come near me now, I'll swat every single one of you. Over the past few days, UZU had had enough of those bees. The place where UZU was located was a canyon, and there were many flowers around him. Whether they were fragrant or not, UZU basically had no idea. He did not exactly have a sense of smell anyway. In any case, there were many bees buzzing around the flowers during the day, which was quite annoying. As for this canyon, it was worth mentioning that it spanned over 100 meters, and its height should be hundreds of meters, or maybe more than that. It seemed to be wedged between two mountains. As for its actual height, UZU had no clear estimate either. He himself was only 3-4 meters tall, and there were plenty of trees that were taller than him around him. He was simply unable to gauge the exact height of the canyon through the dense foliage blocking his sight. However, everything had a silver lining. His vision landed on the willow's canopies. Now, he had a 360-degree vision. This feeling was very novel and strange, but it really existed. It was like some legendary eyes. And thanks to this vision, UZU's sight was not blocked by the dense foliage above him, and he could enjoy the scenery around him to his heart's content. Ellipsis. Are these trees really able to grow this high? Quote, looking around, UZU found that each and every single tree in the vicinity were so huge that they would need several people to finally hug them. He was quite puzzled by this fact. There were willow trees among them as well. Generally, willow trees could only grow 20 to 30 meters tall, but these willow trees. UZU's heart twitched, looking at these weeping willows that could be as tall as 50 to 60 meters. This left him quite shocked. However, he was certain about one thing. There was something strange in the air. At times, UZU would feel something warm entering his body. This feeling was quite refreshing. It felt no different than getting a massage. So, UZU did not reject it either, and even actively started to absorb it. Of course, what UZU failed to notice was that he had gotten taller by 2 to 3 meters in just a few days. It should be brought to notice that when he had just crossed over and awakened his senses, this willow tree was just a sapling. Whereas he had already become a young tree. Ellipsis. He might be a willow tree, but he still retained his consciousness. As such, UZU needed to take some necessary rest. He closed off his senses and acted as if he was asleep. In the blink of an eye, most of the night was over. A faint brightness could be seen at the horizon, like the first light at the break of dawn. It was quite a beautiful sight. At this time, a damp mist began to fill the forest. The appearance of the hazy mist amid the lush and green trees momentarily turned this rarely visited ancient forest into a picturesque sight that resembled no different than a paradise. Buzz. Suddenly, a buzzing noise woke up UZU from his slumber as he subconsciously opened his eyes. The next moment, a bee that had slowly flown into his field of vision caught his attention. Came to disturb my sleep once again, huh? Quote, in his anger, UZU suddenly froze. In a flash, he seemed to have been struck with an inspiration, before he viciously announced. 10 years is not too late for a gentleman to take his revenge, and a few days is not too late for this willow to take revenge. Quote, just as he was finished, a snap was heard, as if the air had exploded, while a green whip shadow cut through the air. Then, there was nothing. The buzzing noise had abruptly vanished. At the same time, a mist of blood slowly bloomed in the air. Watching the bee, that should have been swatted away, reduced into a mist of blood. Uzu was a little stupefied. This power is beyond terrifying. While Uzu was still reeling from the shock, a voice suddenly rang in his mind. Less than ding, you killed a bee, evolution point plus 0.1. Greater than. Even though a voice rang in his mind, Uzu was still quite calm. This was the system's voice, but it had only appeared once. He had not expected to appear once again. It only serves as notification. After having come to this conclusion, Uzu also put this matter to rest, and instantly looked at his evolution points. Indeed, it had increased by 0.1. This is quite a pleasant surprise. Quote, Uzu's reaction might have been half a beat slower, but his words were filled with excitement as if he had just discovered a new world. It had to be brought to notice that he barely managed to gather 0.1 evolution points after basking in sunlight for an entire day. But now, he has gained 0.1 evolution points by just killing a bee. In Uzu's previous life, the willow deity was a peerless character in films and novels, whose main body was a willow tree. She was a peerless and magnificent character, whose strength had no bound, and her battle prowess shook the past and present. Even now, Uzu clearly remembered the paragraph describing her. A tall and slender figure walked out of the willow tree, exuding an air of magnificence and invincibility. It was gazing disdainfully upon all things, looking down upon the world. Its figure was awe-inspiring and otherworldly. It possessed an immaculate physical body, not just limited to its tree form. Its figure was a piece of art, it was otherworldly. Its snow-white clothes were simply flawless, shining bright like a moon. In addition, it was surrounded by faint white mist, and had 3,000 orbs of light floating around it. Every single orb was a world. Single quote, Ashish. It's referring to Lu Shen or willow deity in the perfect world. Tisk tisk, a man should be like this. Uzu did not have that high ambitions. He was not hoping to carry 3,000 worlds on his back like the willow deity. All he was hoping to be free from the tree and transform into a human being. Uzu rarely did fall into delusions of grandeur, but he still could not help but have flights of fancy. After all, he had evolution points, and with its help, he had a promising future ahead of him. Of course, transforming into a human was purely Uzu's fantasy. The evolution points may be quite amazing, but they had not exhibited a near heaven-defying means of creation. Cough, letting out a forceful cough, Uzu, who was immersed in his own delusions of grandeur, finally pulled his mind back to reality. Immediately, he looked around, feeling a little embarrassed. Fortunately, there is no one present. After reacting, Uzu added, well, it would rather be surprising if someone was there in this canyon that was rarely visited by people. Immediately afterward, he got to the main point. Upgrade. I need to quickly upgrade. Originally, he had planned to save the evolution points for the rainy day, but he had not expected to acquire so many evolution points by killing and plundering other creatures. In light of this, Uzu naturally gave priority to upgrading himself first. Only by being stronger can I kill more. No, I can survive longer. In a flash, he put all 0.3 evolution points he had left into other branches. Rustle. The next moment, the willow tree started shaking as another 3 branches started glowing. However, because the sun was on the horizon, it was not as obvious as the night. Except, Uzu clearly felt an unknown energy coursing through these branches this time. Upon taking a closer look, Uzu also discovered that his 3 strengthened branches were more lush and greener than before. Swish, swish, one after another, 3 green afterimages swished through the air, immediately followed by 3 loud and sonorous sonic booms, faintly reverberating throughout the canyon. 4 branches. Looking at the 4 branches dancing in the air according to his will, Uzu became a little excited. Just 1 branch was already enough to give someone goosebumps. It could easily be imagined how terrifying the sight of 4 branches whacking someone would be. Swish, swish, swish. Anyone who gets hit can simply forget about surviving. And, I have a total of 50 branches. If I upgraded all 50, imagining this, Uzu's heart also started pounding in excitement. At that time, I'm afraid I would become a tree demon. Single quote, ellipsis. It takes 10 years for a human to grow, but 100 years to raise a tree. Time, it was the most worthless thing for a tree. In the blink of an eye, half a month had already passed by. In the depths of the canyon, there happened to be a 20 to 30 meters willow tree, tall and straight. There were many trees in the canyon. Be that as it may, if someone ventured into this canyon, he or she would presumably notice only this willow tree. It was mainly because this willow tree had thousands of branches. Sometimes they were drooping down, and other times they were dancing in the air like lively sprites. Every single branch was like a vibrant green waterfall, gracefully swaying in the air. At this time, the willow tree came to a complete halt as if it had received some kind of command. Immediately after, swish, 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 the thousands of branches suddenly thrust toward a point in succession. Boom, asterisk. The next moment, a deafening clap reverberated through the canyon as a shockwave spread out in all directions. Even after creating such a loud and deafening clap, the thousands of willow branches stopped just about half a meter away from a huge rock. Out of reach, that would be the apt way to put it. Thanks to his phenomenal growth, Uzu's height might have reached 20 meters or so in just half a month, and his branches might have become 10 or so meters long. But, Uzu was still helpless in the face of this out-of-reach rock. Be that as it may, there was one thing that was still very much hard to ignore. Although his branches failed to reach the rock, Uzu did manage to upgrade all his branches in the span of half a month. When they struck in unison, their subsequent movements caused the surrounding air to be compressed and shot forward, which when struck that half a meter away rock, smashed it into pieces. Crack. With a cracking sound, the 2 to 3 meter tall rock was reduced into pieces. This is going to be my ace in a hole. Slightly pleasantly surprised, Uzu had already planned on using it as his ace. As a tree, he could not move from his position, and had no choice but to hold his ground. If he encountered a powerful enemy who kept provoking from out of his reach, he could give his enemy a false sense of security using the length of his branches. Until, if necessary, use the air blast to instantly kill his opponent. In fact, this attack could be considered as the legendary air cannon. Of course, there were other means to attack from a distance. For instance, he could grab a stone using his branches and throw it directly. But it would not be as powerful as that. After all, it was the legendary air cannon. If he became stronger, he would be able to compress more air, and its resulting power would be truly extraordinary. At that time, even if he was facing those modern weapons, Uzu would not be afraid. Anyway, how can modern weapons appear here? Suddenly, Uzu recalled that he had sighted planes passing overhead more than once over this half-month. Initially, Uzu concluded that this was a modern world, and coupled with the fact that the willow tree resembled much like it did in his previous life, he believed that this world should not be too unfamiliar. He reckoned that this could be the world from his previous life. However, when he considered the fact that he had grown over 20 meters in a span of just half a month, and looked at the surrounding trees, which had also grown by a few meters or so in the same span, Uzu remained skeptical about this world being his previous world. In his previous world, trees did not have this kind of abnormal growth rate. Furthermore, they did not actively absorb that strange energy like him. If they actively absorbed strange energy in the air, their growth rate would probably have been even higher, so much so that they might not just cover the sky. Not only that, Uzu also noticed that some animals also had some differences from their counterparts in his previous world. Only, the animals did not absorb the strange energy as fast as the trees, and the changes in them were not as obvious as the changes in the trees. They merely ran faster and had sharper senses. Just like today, no animal had dared to trespass his turf for days. As a result, his current evolution points were pretty low. He had spent most of the evolution points he had gathered with great difficulty on upgrading his branches. Now, he was only left with 3 evolution points. Of course, Uzu was not completely inhumane. He still had a compassionate heart. Chirp, chirp, chirp. Suddenly, sharp and continuous birdsongs rang from somewhere on Uzu's body. He looked up toward the top, where a nest had been made on a triangle formed by the branches at some point. It was a bird's nest. A very simple nest. In this nest were 8 fledglings roughly the size of a fist, and they were the ones frantically chirping. Their mouths were wide open, like a greedy mother-in-law asking for a dowry. Are these little ones hungry? Uzu muttered to himself, speculating. Be that as it may, Uzu could not hide his joy, looking at the nest of fledglings. Only because they were aces of peregrine falcons, a breed of medium-sized raptor. An adult peregrine falcon could reach a body length of 41 to 50 cm, and a wingspan of 95 to 115 cm. When hunting for prey, the peregrine falcons would fly high into the air and then dive down at speeds up to 270 to 360 km per hour. A 300 km per hour diving speed. That was simply amazing. It must be brought to notice that the fastest land animal, cheetah, could reach a speed of only 120 km per hour. And the peregrine falcon, on the other hand, was 3 times faster than the cheetah. Hunting at that speed, the wind pressure alone would be simply suffocating. And the fledglings in the nest were the peregrine falcons that were as swift as an arrow. Their lower body was white, their upper chest were covered in fine black spots, and their lower chest to the lower tail feathers were densely covered in black horizontal spots. They might just be fledglings, their jade as white claws were rather sharp and pointed, and their bean-sized eyes bright and sparkling. As for why this nest of aces was nesting on UZU, he himself was to blame for this. It was because not too long ago he had cut off the branches of the surrounding trees as he hated the fact that they were too tall and blocking the sky. And then, this nest of aces fell from a large tree. At first, UZU was thinking of using them to replenish his evolution points, but when he recognized that they were medium-sized raptor, the peregrine falcons, he came up with plans of his own. If he could train them, this nest of peregrine falcons would be of great use. Furthermore, all the plants and animals were undergoing evolutions. If only if, this area of peregrine falcons' beaks were sharper, and their bodies were sturdier. In the future, these peregrine falcons would be able to kill anyone with bullet-like speed in a flash. Just picturing it made him exhilarated. If he was lucky, these little ones could become his right-hand men. Thinking so, UZU naturally took upon himself to babysit them. Furthermore, he did not need to gather any food. Every now and then, whenever he hunted for the evolution points, he was able to get some animal carcasses. Amused, looking at the peregrine falcons with their mouths opened in unison, UZU suddenly flipped over the ground with one of his branches, digging up half of a rabbit's corpse. This rabbit was hunted yesterday, which he had buried in the soil for his own sustenance. Naturally, some of its leftovers were food for these little ones. Swinging the branch a few times, he divided the rabbit into several small pieces, and then carefully fed them into the aces' mouths, one by one. The way they eat is really unsightly, UZU complained, looking at the aces wolfing down the pieces of meat. Afterward, he drove the branch toward the aces and started stroking them. Perhaps because they had gone accustomed to this, the aces chose to ignore his teasing. Some even squinted their eyes as if they were enjoying this. Oh my, UZU laughed it off. He did not mind it either and continued to stroke their newborn feathers. Ellipsis. Meanwhile, not too far away from the canyon, completely out of UZU's notice. Step, step, step. 2 figures were approaching toward the depths of the forest. They were 2 pheasant girls. They were wearing rough linen clothes, but they happened to be quite pretty. If they dolled themselves a little, wore something better, they would probably attract a lot of people's eyes. After all, these 2 happened to be identical twins. Sis, what's going on these days? In the village, we're not even allowed to enter the mountains anymore. Quote, sigh, it's probably because something has been going on in the mountains lately. In just half a month, 7 to 8 people have been bitten by snakes and insects, and are lying in the bed now. On top of that, 1 person has also gone missing. Quote, when mentioning this, one of the more quiet and gentler girls sighed helplessly. This, looking stunned, the other girl immediately stopped in her place. Then, she looked again deeper into the forest with hesitation as she apprehensively stated. So, am I a bad sister to encourage you to come here? Quote, don't be stupid, Linger, what's bad about it? Quote, saying so, He Ching-er could not help but complain, it's summer, and if I don't take a proper bath, I'm afraid I'll stink. Furthermore, after a pause, He Ching-er, who also happened to be the older sister, also looked deep into the woods, hesitatingly assuring herself and her sister, it should be fine, after all, we've come here so many times already. Quote, I guess you're right, it's not like there are any powerful beasts here. Quote, with a playful smile, her younger sister, He Ling-er grabbed her sister's hand and started heading toward the forest. Even so, the faces of He Ching-er and He Ling-er turned more and more quizzical as they headed deeper into the forest. Sis, do you think that the forest was this dense when we came here last time? Quote, no, it was not, it's dark, and weirdly scary. Quote, looking at the dense forest, where not even a few rays of light could make its way through their foliage, He Ling-er could not help but be flustered. However, that was all. She was flustered, nothing else. After all, they had grown up in these mountains. Gritting their teeth, they searched for the familiar trail and headed deeper, quicking their pace. In a short while, the two had crossed a small hill, and when they caught sight of a pool not too far away from them, a smile immediately bloomed on their faces. This pool was quite clear and clean, so clean that the two fatigued twins were clearly reflected in it. Ellipsis. Meanwhile, Uzu, who was teasing the brood of peregrine falcons, was suddenly shocked. He was taken aback by the fact that he was hearing human voices. Furthermore, they were female voices. Uzu was a little puzzled, and promptly looked in the direction where the voices were coming from. For a moment, Uzu could not help but be stupefied. What kind of curtain opener is this? Quote, looking down from high above, he actually saw two figures frolicking in a small pool of water hundreds of meters away. Currently, hundreds of meters was not that far away for him. His excellent eyesight even let him see it even more clearly. Well, these two are quite gorgeous. After a moment of hesitation, he just passed a comment, but nothing more. What else could he say? He could not go forward and greet them, could he? As a tree, the most he could do was bind. Furthermore, humans would be troublesome. Until now, he had never even considered how to get along with them. As the adage goes, the people of a different race or ethnicity could not be trusted. And humans were pretty complex creatures. If he was down on his luck and ran into some human extremists, a tree monster like him would probably be sliced open and studied. And that was a risk he did not dare to take. After having thought of this, he also gave up on the notion of taking the initiative to come into contact with these two women. He decided to keep a low profile until he had the ability to protect himself. Spring was indeed beautiful. Uzu kept admiring the sight for a long time. Also, he did not move even a bit until the two girls left. He even sorted his branches, making them look no different from the surrounding willows. After a long time, silently watching the girls' departure, Uzu regained his focus, discarded all the distracting thoughts, and entered an ethereal state once more. He had discovered this ethereal state by chance, and it allowed him to refine evolution points faster. Less than ding, basked in sunlight, evolution points plus 0.1. Greater than. As the sonorous sound of notification rang in his mind, Uzu slowly opened his eyes. For a moment, his attention was drawn to the status screen, gazing at his one evolution point which he had just accumulated. Just now, he had 0.9. With the 0.1 evolution point he had just refined, it pushed his evolution points to exactly 1. What was worth mentioning was that Uzu's all 50 branches had already been completely upgraded. The reason he was stacking points was simply because he was going to carry out the next round of upgrades. Less than ding, please confirm, are you sure you want to use one evolution point to upgrade your route? Greater than, yes. Having given his confirmation, Uzu became a little excited. Compared to the branches which require just 0.1 points to upgrade one branch, upgrading a single root requires a whole 1 point. Be that as it may, it was also a fact that as a tree, upgrading his roots was a matter of grave importance. As for the fact that so many points were required to upgrade his root meant that it had to have its own reason. Moreover, Uzu was also expecting that after this upgrade, he would be able to pull his roots out of the ground and run like a human. If that became really possible, he could even picture the image of a willow tree running on the ground with its root acting as its legs. I'm afraid that image would be really ugly. A tree monster, or a demon. Thinking about this, Uzu started wondering what he should call himself in the future. Ellipsis. And right at that moment, Uzu's mind was suddenly assaulted with excruciating pain. He felt as if some energy had surged into his roots, and before he could even digest this surging energy, it had already broken through the shackles of Uzu's roots. Followed by a crack sound, Uzu felt as if his roots had shattered as an excruciating pain was transmitted from deep within the ground. The bout of pain was agonizing that Uzu's branches were shaking non-stop, as if they were trembling. What was even more terrifying was that those upgraded branches were dancing randomly in the air, and this random dance of theirs was giving rise to waves of winds. For a while, the area around Uzu was reduced into a forbidden zone where no one could enter. Only the nest at the top of the tree was left untouched. Even in this agonizing pain, Uzu had not forgotten about this brood of peregrine falcons. I never thought that upgrading the roots would be so painful. Quote, Despite the agony, Uzu kept enduring again and again. And a short while after this, rumble, the ground around Uzu suddenly blew apart as a 10 or so meter long black root came into view. My goodness, looking at the sinuous root, which under his control had completely transformed into a jet black python and controlled it like his arm, Uzu could not help but be dumbfounded. So this is the power of evolution points. It has given me free reign over this root. Of course, it was just a sub-root, not his main root. His main root was about 20 to 30 meters long, and it went deep into the underground rock layer. More importantly, it was Uzu's very life. Uzu had to find that out the hard way. He had attempted to pull his main root from deep underground just a while ago. A pain so indescribable and excruciating that it almost struck his soul away hit him. Pain, heart-wrenching pain. Well, after that, not to mention running on the ground, Uzu had even dropped the idea of controlling his main root. After experiencing this excruciating pain, Uzu felt that if he suffered it a few more times, he would be completely finished. Even if he came to possess outstanding strength, he could not change the fact that he was a tree. And a tree's biggest weakness was its main root. As for others, like branches, as well as the sub-roots, even if they were broken, Uzu would not even bat an eye. However, his main root was different. It was basically his throat, and must not be touched easily. Thinking of this, Uzu subconsciously drove his other sub-roots. Boom, 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 asterisk. Along with fearsome tremors, the entire ground moved as if an earth dragon had flipped over. Meanwhile, deep within the underground, out of everyone's sight, Uzu had already manipulated 8 sub-roots to tightly wrap around his main root. After all, this is my very life. I cannot let it remain unprotected. As for the longest black root exposed above the ground, Uzu drove it back into the ground. In case of an unexpected situation, this black root could also act as the coup de grace. Not to mention, the might of this lone sub-root that was several times thicker than his branches. And right at that moment, Uzu got startled, as if he had sensed something. Tisk tisk, curiosity kills the cat, you know. In the direction Uzu was looking, there was actually a pair of fiery red eyes not too far away in the dense forest, staring dead straight in Uzu's direction. He very decisively immediately played dead, remaining completely still. Even
No bitches. No bitches. No bitches.